If you were to ask me 10 years ago how I felt about Family Guy, without a doubt or any hint of hesitation, I would have said it was the greatest show to have ever existed. Given I was 10, and I think a huge part of why I liked it so much was because I was a literal child, and I thought I was so cool for watching and knowing absolutely everything about a show intended solely for adults. But looking back, I actually do still stand by my love of Family Guy. It has this weirdly special place in my heart because it was one of my first big, this is all I'm going to talk about and make it my entire personality hyperfixations. But when I say I like Family Guy, I do kind of hesitate a little bit. There's just this giant elephant in the room whenever the show gets brought up. And that, my friends, is modern Family Guy. Family Guy is definitely not a show that gets better the longer it's on air. It just becomes nothing more than Instagram meme page fodder in the form of 6-second, no-context memes.
Hey Lois, what's going on here?
Which, I guess are funny in their own regard, but they can't carry the disoriented stupidity of a full episode. It's a weird relationship most people have with Family Guy's comedy. To me, and I think most people who watch the show's first 6 seasons are golden, especially the first 4 seasons. I still to this day watch those on a regular basis, and frankly, can say this without hesitation. I think they're absolutely hilarious. However, I can just as easily understand why it leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. Humor is immensely subjective, so what works for me might not be your thing, and that's okay. Seasons 7 and 8 are different. They're okay, I guess, they're just not really my thing. I feel like season 7 was the beginning of the end for Family Guy. They were on such a high after being canceled twice. Yeah, twice. That when the show finally started gaining recognition, they took whatever most people found funny and just amplified it. But not in a good way at all. I'm actually just gonna be really blunt. These seasons are not good, in my opinion. I say in my opinion because I know a lot of people really like those seasons. And I mean, I gotta give credit where credit is due. Season 7 of the show did earn Family Guy an Emmy nomination for the Best Outstanding Comedy Series, marking it as the first animated series to be nominated since The Flintstones in 1961. But, I don't know. It all just felt so different and weird. It was almost as if I could just sense the downward spiral the show was about to find itself in. There's only a handful of episodes in those 2 seasons that are actually worth watching to me. Season 8's Brian and Stewie, despite its immensely dark tone, is one of my all-time favorite episodes of the show. I really enjoy the episodes that act as character studies, and this one is no stranger to that. It doesn't need to be funny to shine. It just needs Brian and Stewie. I also adore Road to the Multiverse from Season 8, that one also being centered around Brian and Stewie. Do you see the pattern here? A few other episodes that I like are... I'm gonna be really honest, I'm looking through the episodes and find it really hard to name a few that I actively enjoy and want to watch. I will say, Family Guy is weirdly a classic. Let's not kid ourselves, okay? I guess the way I look at it is you shouldn't conflate a whole season as amazing or Emmy nomination deserving, just due to a few... 3 good apples. Like, I wouldn't hit myself over the head with a bat if I had to sit and watch Quagmire's Baby or Quagmire's Dad. By the way, why are there so many episodes revolving around Quagmire and his family? I'm really confused by it. Some episodes over the first 6 seasons obviously aren't the best. I'm not really a fan of the Star Wars ones, to be honest, but it's like that with every show. You can't really get mad at them for that. What you can get mad at them for is anything past those 8 seasons. Seasons 9 and onward are just god-awful. I find almost every episode to be unwatchable. Of course, there are a few exceptions. Off the top of my head, I could name a few. Back to the pilot from Season 10. The Big Bang Theory from Season 9, Road to the North Pole from Season 9, Joe's Revenge from Season 11, Mr. and Mrs. Stewie from Season 10, Forget Me Not from Season 10, Meg Stinks from Season 12, Brian's Play from Season 11, Candy Quahog Marshmallow from Season 14. I know a lot of people don't like that one, but I don't know, I enjoy it a lot. And then there were fewer, which I actually have a bit to say about this one, so hold tight. I honestly don't know what happened, but everything that had been going downwards in quality in the past few years finally came to a boil and completely destroyed everything that I once liked about the show. It was a completely bloated shell of its former self, filled to the rim with absolutely nothing but really disturbingly dark humor that always feels very out of place. And, of course, fart jokes, barf jokes, poop jokes, and so on and so forth. Season 9 was the first season to use HD animation, which, despite making the characters look even more stiff and lifeless, they showcased their budget really well in the first episode. I admire the thought that went into this episode, and also the fact that they were actually willing to kill off some characters, even if they were characters absolutely no one cared about. Also, James Woods. He's always a treat. I love that dude. I truly do believe that this episode should have been the show's swan song. It would have given the writers even more freedom to make the episode absolutely amazing. The stakes could have been raised. It could have actually made you feel something because, oh no, I hope Joe lives, or, oh my god, an actual heartfelt moment in a modern Family Guy episode. No way! I think it would have been a really fantastic way to send the show off. But still, as is, it's a genuinely great episode and one that I recommend if you are refusing to watch Modern Family Guy. It's actually good, and I strongly, strongly recommend you watch it. I like it a lot. After that, though, don't bother. It's just painful. But why was the show's quality declining over time? Why did every single character become less and less likable? Well, to make it plain and simple, Flanderization. For anyone who doesn't know, Flanderization is essentially when you take a single trait and exaggerate it more and more over time until it becomes the character's entire personality. You see it a lot in cartoons and sitcoms specifically, especially the ones that are around forever. I'm looking at you, Simpsons. It's a whole other mountain to climb some other time. A pretty good example of this is Knuckles from the Sonic franchise. When you first meet Knuckles, he's a hot-headed and naive loner who literally only cares about protecting the Master Emerald. But let's take one of those traits, that being his naive nature, and blow it up more and more until you're left with Boomverse Knuckles. A bumbling fool. Which, Knuckles in Sonic Boom is hilarious, but that's not really the point. The point is, Flanderization completely alienates the viewer. It forces you to learn these characters all over again because of how different they're portrayed in every single thing they do. Frankly, it just turns people off completely because people liked what they liked in the long, long ago. Not the cheap cardboard cutouts you're trying to pass off as what we knew or loved. Family Guy's Flanderization truly knows no bounds. It's not just the main cast. Oh god, no. It is absolutely everyone and everything in the show. It's even the comedy. So how about you and me take a little trip down memory road to what Family Guy used to be, compared to whatever it's trying to be now. Starting with...
Hey, Peter.
They definitely gave Peter the Homer Simpson treatment. Except they turned Peter into the actual worst character I've ever had to witness in my lifetime, whereas Homer just gets more and more stupid. He's still somewhat lovable. My hatred for modern Peter goes above and beyond what I even thought was possible, which is immensely depressing for me because Peter used to own the show. McStroke is one of the funniest episodes in the show's discography, and Peter runs the show perfectly. He was the embodiment of the bumbling dad character, who was hilariously idiotic and would get carried away easily. But you could tell he still actually cared about his family at the end of the day, especially in the earlier seasons. A really good example of this that comes to mind is Let's Go to the Hop from season 2. I like Peter's arc a lot in this episode. It shows that his excitable nature leads to him being selfish, but eventually he pulls his head out of his nether regions and puts Meg above himself. It's a really nice thing to see and leaves you with a warm, cozy feeling, because the episode makes it clear to you earlier on that there's a reason for him feeling this way. He just wants to be someone that matters. He craves the validation from popularity that he never got in his teen years. It's really relatable for most people, including myself, even if we don't want to admit it. It's a nice story. Definitely one of my favorite episodes of the show. Modern Peter, though. Yeah, you have no chance seeing anything remotely close to that anymore. He has absolutely no moral compass. He just does whatever he wants and is a complete unlovable jerk, to put it plain and simple. Every negative aspect of Peter as a character has just been amplified to the point where it is actually unbearable. Instead of just being a typical dummy, he's absurdly idiotic to the point where it just aggravates me. He no longer has any motivation for his mindless and selfish actions. He is simply compelled to do whatever the absolute worst thing he can think of is. Instead of being out of the loop with his kids, he's just plain abusive. That's his character now summed up. He's just abusive. I really don't think I can bring myself to talk about him anymore. It's just sad thinking about how they broke down his character into something completely unrecognizable. So let's move on to our next victim. Oh, Lois. Oh, sweet, dear Lois. Where to begin? No, seriously, where do I begin? Because this is a whole lot to unpack. Lois to me wasn't really a matter of Flanderization. I can't really pin down an exact quality of hers that they inflated to the point where she's unrecognizable, because there are just too many to count. They just purposely woke up one day and decided to make her really, 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 really unlikable, rearranging her entire character into some evil clone of herself. Lois went from the typical caring mother who felt boxed in and wanted more than what's been handed to her. She even attacked a group of girls who were snotty to Meg. Yeah, a stark contrast to her modern self telling Meg to kill herself because she was tired of Meg's mental health struggles. What? Now she's a scheming, selfish, and extremely sex-motivated character. Given sex has always been a theme in Family Guy, but now she physically and emotionally cannot live without sex. And I mean that with full seriousness. She loses her mind and cannot cope. Also, instead of just feeling a little suffocated by her role as a mother and wife, she seemingly hates everything about her marriage and children, constantly handing out unnecessary insults that aren't even funny. Like, I genuinely don't understand what the reason for these quote-unquote jokes are. It's just mean-spirited and makes me feel bad. I guess one last thing you could point out about Lois is that she is just so... God, she's so annoying. She talks and it's like acid is leaking from my ears. Actually, that I guess could count as a huge inflation culprit. Her voice. Season 35, she's gonna start sounding like Corpse Husband. I'm just gonna fly through these two really quick because, frankly, they are not here nor there for me personally, so their changes don't really have that much of an effect on me or anyone who has ever watched the show, to be honest, but they do affect the interactions between characters heavily, so let's get into it. Pretty much, Meg goes from a basic insecure teenage girl who is embarrassed of her family to an abused and suicidal teen who can be really creepy in a lot of the episodes. Like, in Barely Legal from season 5 and Friends Without Benefits in season 11 are just two weird episodes that come to mind. In the first one, she kidnaps Brian in an obsessive haze after he drunkenly kisses her one night. I gotta say, I actually do love that episode though. There's no denying the hilarity in it. The latter episode is god-awful, and the basic premise is she has a crush on a guy, but plot twist, he's gay, and plot twist again, he likes Chris. So Meg tries to force Chris into a sexual relationship with the guy for her own sick fantasies. Yeah, it's what we're working with now. It's just all really weird and really uncomfortable to watch. Chris, on the other hand, I actually used to like him a lot. He was just this soft-spoken, sweet, dumb kid who's really into art. But it quickly devolved over time, leaving us with nothing more than a bumbling idiot who is the face of a lot of jerk-off jokes. There's really not that much lore surrounding Chris anymore. Next. Okay, I'm gonna be really honest. This is the one positive thing to come out of the show's exaggerations. I actually like modern Stewie a lot more. I think he's way funnier in anything after the first 2 seasons than before. But I guess for the video's sake, I'll go over his character development. Stewie went from a deranged genius baby whose one goal was to kill his mom, Lois, for some reason. His motivation isn't very clear, but hey, who am I to murder shame? Now though, he's an extremely flamboyant genius who is much more interested in being besties with Brian than anything else. And I think that's neat. Their friendship has always been a highlight of the show for me, as you could probably tell from the handful of modern episodes I'm fond of. I like that their friendship just kind of happened. The Brian and Stewie dynamic wasn't really intended. In fact, Brian was clearly set out to be Peter's sidekick, but after Road to Rhode Island in season 2, the writers realized the comedic and heartfelt gold buried within the two of them. It's really nice that their friendship has continuity as well. Their bond grows the longer time goes on. It's a really nice thing to see in a show that is so heavily episodic. And this, of course, brings me to... Brian is just depressing. When I was a kid, I absolutely loved Brian. I had a Brian plushie, I had a custom-made Brian mug that my dad made for me after Brian died because I sobbed violently for hours. Yeah, it was a little much. That all being said, though, I still love Brian. He's definitely my favorite character in the show to this day, but specifically Brian before he became the preachy scumbag shadow of himself that he is today. Brian constantly played the straight man, who was always just along for the ride. He brought balance into the show that it so dearly needed. The comparison between him and the absolute absurdity of the rest of the family was definitely essential. Without him, the show wouldn't have worked as well as it did. He was just some depressed, smart-aleck talking dog who Peter found homeless on the street. He was just great. I love Brian. But then we meet Brian 2.0. Personally, this is the most offensive exaggeration brought to the show. They took his wittiness and somehow morphed it into him being literally the scummiest little monster imaginable. Any sort of douchebag qualities running through your head, he definitely checks all the boxes. I think the worst sin committed through Brian by the writers is the fact that he is overly woke, but without actually being woke. He's Seth MacFarlane's literal mouthpiece. It's his normal talking voice and everything, which, you know, in itself, I don't technically have a problem with putting your opinions into what you make. At the end of the day, it's yours and you get to do whatever you want with it. And if people are mad, they just can stop watching. That's what I did. It's not what I signed up for, so why would I keep watching? But there's a way to do it, and there's a way not to do it. This is the latter. It's jarring after you spend an entire episode picking apart literally anyone who is a little different from you, to then just justify it by going, okay, racism is bad, cue the weird slow head tilt to sad music thing this show does now. And before anyone comes at me to say, well, actually, the dark humor used in Family Guy is actually meant to parody those who are making the jokes. It's to make fun of them and how stupid they look. Trust me. I am more than aware of that. I analyze any piece of media that I get my grubby little hands on. So trust me when I say I am aware that that's the point behind it. But it's a very fine line you walk when doing that. It's a hard thing to get right. Family Guy, you aren't clever. I don't know who when you were growing up told you that you were, but you aren't. I personally believe you should leave the handling of politics to the professionals who can actually make something meaningful and insightful. I don't really need to have Peter Griffin, of all people, give me a lesson on why bigotry is bad. It's really just not necessary. Believe me. After that, we fall into the side characters category, which, of course, they get their fair share of developmental regression. Especially Peter's friends. That's actually a really good starting point. Beginning with Mr. Glenn Quagmire, who is probably the most notable of Peter's friends. Quagmire was always kind of a creep, there's no denying that, but he was more than that. He was just a chill dude who liked getting with any girl that gave him the time of day. Now he's... well, let's just say he should probably be in jail. He's also just a massive douche, and is apparently a super ultra smart know-it-all now, to the point where he probably would mansplain how to take a sip of water. God, what is with this show and making every single character so unlikable? It doesn't stop there, though. Joe, who is the inspiring, absolute Chad of Quahog that just happened to be physically handicapped, now is just the human embodiment of endless quote-unquote cripple jokes, which just gets really tiring after years and years of that being his entire character. I honestly think the worst one was what they did to Cleveland. He was just a soft-spoken deli owner who had a few idiotic tendencies. Now, though, he's just modern Peter 2.0, but not nearly as much of an ass. We can thank his god-awful spin-off show for his newfound ways. I could easily sit here and name off every character continuously, stating what they once were parallel to what they are now, but we would be here forever. Bonnie went from a loving wife and mother to a constant cheater who feels utterly trapped in her marriage. Not really sure what sort of switch flipped there, but okay. Carter went from an overprotective rich snob to that, but it's not even about being protective anymore. It's just about being a spoiled adult man baby child.
And
so on and so forth. I'm gonna put a stop to the comparisons there, though, because I'm just getting super depressed now. Family Guy's Flanderization is probably the most jarring case of over-exaggeration that I have personally witnessed, because the characters really did just feel like normal people that made you go, yeah, I've met someone like that before. Hence the reasoning behind an American parody. As Family Guy and The Simpsons have made painstakingly clear over the years, Family Guy took its inspiration from The Simpsons in their success. The shows in their first few years were very similar, although Simpsons was always much stronger in constructing meaningful stories than Family Guy. It's not even a competition. And don't get me wrong, The Simpsons has its fair share of absolutely destroying the characters and what they've built over the years. Honestly, anything past season 10 of that show is not the same show as the earlier years. Just look at Smithers. His whole personality now is, oh, I'm a small ooh bean, I love penises, ooh, what's this I heard about a fisting? But the key difference is that The Simpsons doesn't rely on dark humor. So the characters are still likable, just in a much different way from how they were before. Family Guy characters no longer are somewhat relatable characters that you have a soft spot for, and that is the danger behind Flanderization. It can so easily tear down everything pre-existing within a show, movie, comic, anything really, only to build it back up as a cheap rip-off of itself. The characters became soulless ghouls who are obviously only on air still for their sweet cash. They became caricatures rather than characters. Creatures that you could only imagine in your worst nightmares. Family Guy, I'll leave it there. And all I'll say as my final remark is this is one show that I'll be changing the channel from. Every single time.